Hello everyone, this is my video for the Seven Samurai and Panther Panchali, I believe is how it's pronounced. Also, I apologize for any mispronunciation. Some of the names were a bit difficult for me to pronounce, but I will be trying my best. Starting off with things I liked about Seven Samurai, I had seen a lot of parts of this film before, since I did watch parts for other film classes, but it was really nice to watch all the way through, though I did need to take some breaks here and there. One thing I specifically loved about the film was the characterization of Katsushiro. Sorry, I had to check the name. Katsushiro, who is the young apprentice samurai. And I love his characterization, especially when he is in the flower fields. I feel like the flower fields offer a sort of it's kind of a motif for him and flowers, and I think it represents his naivete and how different he is from the other samurai, since whenever he is seen in these field of flowers, he is very different than the other samurai. He is more like a child because he's extremely young. And I think this is really exemplified when he first meets the young girl who he starts to kind of have feelings for. He immediately thinks that she is a young boy and gets mad at him for picking flowers while he actively has flowers in his hand, since they are both supposed to be getting ready to fight. And I think that it really has I think it's a really great moment of characterization for his character, because he is kind of battling back and forth between wanting to be a very intense and proper samurai, but also loving nature and wanting to relax and being young like he should be. I also really think that having him in this field of flowers in general is a really good juxtaposition to the look of the town in terms of sets. I think that it really shows the beauty of nature with the depravity and kind of intenseness of man in these battles. As for Panther, I really enjoyed some of the creative shots in this film. A lot of the ones that stuck with me were from early in the film, and they were the ones that kind of created a circle with the frame. One happened when Durga was waking up Apu. We first see him as a young boy, and she opens up a little hole in the blanket and you just see his eye. And I think that creates a really interesting frame that really draws us into this character as this quirky kind of little boy. The second one comes from a little bit earlier before the scene. It's when Durga is still a young girl and she's looking into the little pot that houses all the kittens. And I think it's a really fun introduction to her character when she is younger. I also really enjoyed the lighting throughout this film. It was very dark compared to Seven Samurai, but I thought this really added to the tone of the film, since the tone is so intense and it really tries to exemplify real life like Italian neorealism. And so I think that having the dim, more dramatic lighting with not a lot of highlights adds a really great intensity that mirrors the plot very nicely. As for shots and scenes that really showed how the directors could use human emotion and how they created this, I will be looking at some names because I do not want to butcher them. But the first one from Seven Samurai is when Kanbei reveals that Kukuchio was a farmer. In the scene, Kukuchio is having a breakdown about how the samurai have forced the farmers into this position and forced them into this lifestyle of being rude and sneaky. And in the scene, he is breaking down. It's just visceral pain of him yelling at these people who haven't respected him throughout the entire film. And at first it starts out as anger, and then his character slowly devolves into just sadness. And during this scene, something that is really incredible and I think really shows the director's ability to portray human emotions is how the camera stays static on him, cutting back once or twice throughout his entire monologue, but mostly keeping on Kukuchio so we could really see his emotions. It traps us there with him so that we, like him, have to confront the scenes of what he's feeling. And I think it really creates this just nice human narrative. It's because he is the only thing we see in this frame. It is very poignant because we only see him as he starts devolving more and more into sadness, and then it cuts eventually to him on the floor, keeled over, and it's just his back, and we only see his back and the faces of the samurai in front of him. And I think it shows a really human side of this character, just not leaving the frame and seeing him the entire time. We see something that humans often feel, which is pain and years of just built up anger turning itself into just heartache. And I think that is a very human quality. And I think having the static cam on him the entire time with that one cut at the end to just his back of him sobbing, it was really poignant and created a very nice narrative. The second is Heihachi's funeral, when Kurosawa used many low angle shots, which really helped to show the entire spread of the shot, but it showed all of the mourning villagers, and I think having it at that low, wide angle really encompassed the grief that was being felt. It wasn't direct close-ups of everyone sobbing once or twice to try and really hammer home that they were mourning. It was from afar, and it relied on the sound of them crying and the shots of people keeled over from afar. It lets the audience feel distance from the grief, but seeing all of them together mourning this person really helped to bring together this human emotion that is grief, because we were able to see the full scope of what they were feeling, and it wasn't close up or glamorized. It was far away, distant, which is sometimes an emotion that grief can feel like. And I think that this was really successful in creating a great depiction of grief. As for Pather Panchali, the first scene is when the mother, I'm not sure if I got her name, but the mother is talking to the father about wanting to move by the river in order to make more money preaching, and he kind of just shoos her off and says like it won't work and that he has better opportunities lined up, and she begins to speak about how lonely she is and how she doesn't want to live in the rainforest. She has no neighbors and there's jackals everywhere, and she just feels lonely in her life. And the genius thing about this shot that really shows how the director is showing this human emotion that is loneliness is that in the first half of the shot, you could see her in the background and then her husband in the foreground, and it pushes in just on her as she starts talking about being lonely, which exemplifies that she is lonely by isolating her from the rest of the scene. It mirrors how she is feeling, and it just creates this really intense feeling of loneliness, and she is now the only one in the shot, and you could really see her pain close up. And I think this was a very genius move by the director to mirror what her monologue is about to the camera movements and isolating her from her husband to show how she feels isolated in her life. And then another scene, which is obviously quite poignant because it is about Durga's passing. So I chose the scene where the father is returning and he is trying to give gifts, and he has a new sari for Durga because they were talking about how they all just needed new things because they were in poverty. And the mother falls to the floor and breaks down. And one thing I love about this that the director did is that the shot stayed static. It didn't cut back and forth between the two of them. The shot stayed static, almost trapping the two subjects into the frame so that we have to feel their pain with them. And it was just extremely poignant because you see the mother falling to the floor and sobbing, and he's not sure why she is crying or why she is so upset until he finally looks up and realizes that Durga is gone. And the camera pans outward so we can fully see his body, and just the panic start to set in. And I think these camera motions of keeping it static and then that slight zoom out, pulling out, I think that really helps the audience stay within that, like stay in the frame, and it traps them in their grief and pulls out eventually to show just how just flabbergasted, just how strange he must feel having received this information. I think it really shows this human emotion that is loss, that is pain, what even might feel like guilt. And I think all these emotions getting wrapped up into a static frame, I think really helps for the audience and the characters to sit within their emotions and within their feelings. As for my conclusions, I really felt like Seven Samurai embodied a lot of the aspects of traditional Japanese film, especially the historical films, in that the film is very visually elegant. For a film that had so much action, there was not a lot of sharp cuts or montage editing like other action films in the past or even the present have. It was very smooth shots that showed the scenery and really let the landscape and the characters shine through the plot, and it was just very well filmed. And although the film was about 3.5 hours long, which did make it extremely hard for me to watch, I had to take multiple breaks. I did enjoy it a bit more than Pather, but I really enjoyed Seven Samurai because of how beautiful the film looked and how it was able to tell really amazing character stories. And for that reasoning, I would give the film an 8 out of 10. I thought that it was just a very beautiful example of storytelling, but it was 3.5 hours long and therefore very hard for me to get through. As for Panchali, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. It was very reminiscent of Italian neorealism, as in following these people through their daily lives and showing how hard it was for people in India to live during this time, especially if you were impoverished. But I still found this one very hard to watch. It was, I don't want to say boring because the film was not boring, especially with its subject matter, but it was a bit more difficult for me to watch due to its slow pace and not having a lot of action. But I thought that the storytelling was very great, and I thought that especially the monsoon scenes were very, very heartbreaking and just showed really, it was really successful in showing just the range of human emotions that one may go through, especially if you were in a situation where you were in poverty. But I think the film overall was very successful in following the kind of Italian neorealism style that became popular in Indian films during the time. So that is why I give it I believe I gave it a 6. I already don't remember what I gave it, but I believe I gave that one I finally give Pather a 6 out of 10, and that is all for the films. Thank you for watching.